Good afternoon all, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I apologize that I'm not able to be there with you in person. As you know, NATO's summit in Chicago is wrapping up today, and I'm following the discussions very closely here from NATO headquarters in Brussels. I would like to begin by commending the Atlantic Initiative on the fantastic work you've done in promoting greater debate, discussion and dialogue on a wide array of international security issues, including how NATO can be even more effective in ensuring peace and security. The Your Ideas, Your NATO project is just but one of many outstanding and exciting projects you have spearheaded. Your commitment to strengthening transatlantic bonds is unmatched, and I'm happy to continue contributing to your efforts and supporting your activities for as long and as much as I'm able to from Brussels. I would also like to pass a word of thanks to all those who have contributed with essays and blogs to the policy workshop competition on the Atlantic community site. Over the past several weeks, I've read a number of Your Ideas, Your NATO papers, and on more than one occasion I wanted to comment on your interesting ideas. I'm glad I have that opportunity today. For the next few minutes, I'd like to take some time to specifically address 3 policy papers. The 3 papers I will speak about focus on very different but equally important core aspects of NATO: transparency and engagement, partnerships, and lastly, smart defense. All of these issues have been discussed at the Chicago summit, so they matter a lot to the Allies. But before I address the first memo, let me make a few general remarks about the organization that we are looking at. For more than 30 years, NATO used to be a relatively straightforward concept. Its single task was to defend a given stretch of territory against a given adversary with more or less the same strategy and a set of military capabilities. The alliance did not need to select its mission or choose from a range of political and military contingencies. There was one mission imposed on NATO from the outset. The mission only became redundant when its adversaries, the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union, collapsed from within. But all this has changed dramatically since the end of the Cold War, and NATO has evolved from a rather static defense alliance into a very active security organization. Instead of one overriding mission, it now offers its members and partners a range of security services, from immediate Article 5 protection to forging long-term cooperation. I find this process quite unique. If you look at other multilateral organizations, they often find it hard to adapt to new tasks and changing external factors. Yet NATO has been evolving dynamically, and I hope it will continue to do so. However, this transformation process also comes with a number of tough challenges. Synchronizing the security interest of 28 member countries is not easy, particularly if at the end of the day all 28 countries need to agree by consensus on a given policy issue. Deciding on what is a priority and what is not is also not easy, and making available financial resources in times of austerity for collective and cooperative security is an even greater challenge. I think you should take these suggestions into consideration when analyzing NATO and making proposals for what it can do even better. But let me now turn to the memo on transparency and engagement, 2 subjects that NATO takes very seriously, especially through our public diplomacy efforts. To enhance transparency at NATO, I would argue that we have come a long way in revamping NATO's interaction with the public. If you look at the range of public diplomacy activities that we organize, sponsor, and initiate in allied and partner nations now, whether it be online or offline, and compare it to what NATO offered some 5 or even 10 years ago, there is a world of difference. But there is certainly room for greater public engagement. I think this is especially true when it comes to NATO being more open to outside opinions and perspectives. Ahead of the Chicago summit, we have launched a couple of new initiatives at NATO that aim to close the gap between the walls of our headquarters and the general public. The We NATO, our interactive web platform, for example, policy workshops with grad students and researchers, seminars with security experts, and regular meetings with bloggers and citizen reporters are ways in which we have been increasing our dialogue and transparency with the public. Beyond these two platforms, another way in which we are trying to give the public better access to information is by digitizing our archives. Before, one had to visit our headquarters to view historical documents, but now there is an even increasing number online. Your policy paper also proposes that NATO develop wider-ranging partnerships between militaries through exchanges and training. It argues that person-to-person engagement is the best way to facilitate mutual understanding between militaries from NATO members and our partners. I couldn't agree more. Exchange programs, whether they involve the military, policymakers, or students, are one of the best tools to promote broader and deeper cooperation between countries. NATO already has a number of training programs in place, including one at the NATO Defense College in Rome and also the NATO School in Oberammergau, where military and civilian staff from across the entire NATO family can get together for training purposes. But I will convey the idea to identify additional options for direct engagement to NATO's international military staff. With regard to your proposal to broadcast the meetings of the North Atlantic Council, the NAC, let me remind you that some of these meetings, such as foreign and defense ministers and even summit meetings, are partially open to the media. However, broadcasting all regular meetings of the NAC would make it very difficult for our national stakeholders to negotiate their interests and viewpoints successfully. Bottom line is that you simply need a confidential atmosphere to talk about sensitive topics. Now, doing so could bring about some very serious risks, such as a reduced preparedness to compromise and an increased appetite for putting maximum demands on the table to show that national interest can be aggressively protected, and just two of them. But this shouldn't prevent nations from involving more external experts in their debates and, wherever possible, increasing transparency of their deliberations. I'd like to turn now to the second memo. This one examined NATO's partnerships and set forth suggestions on how we can improve our relationships with partners. Specifically, the paper suggests that NATO restructure the Mediterranean dialogue as well as partner with other international actors to enable NATO to offer a more comprehensive assistance package. It's clear we all agree on the importance of partnerships. A globally engaged NATO needs a strong and vibrant network of partnerships. Arguably, the alliance's greatest success story since the end of the Cold War has been its ability to attract many countries across the globe to support its operation and broader policy objectives. Today, a non-Article 5 operation without partner participation is, I guess, almost unthinkable. Keeping and strengthening these partnerships is NATO's best insurance policy for promoting its cooperative and norms-based approach to security, and particularly at a time when the West is in relative decline. So it does not come as a surprise that the issue at NATO's partnership ranges very high on the Chicago agenda. In fact, the summit is the largest summit, with over 60 countries, including from the Arab world, which are represented at Chicago. Isn't this quite something? The Allies have closely followed the Arab Spring and the important changes that are taking place in the Mediterranean and in the Middle East region, with people demanding more freedom and democracy. These changes are political, social, and economic in character, and they are therefore primarily a matter of domestic policies. But the Arab Spring revolutions have made one thing clear. People, the majority of them below 40, the so-called .com generation, want a perspective for their lives. They want jobs, education, and access to markets. Many of them also want civil liberties and political participation. They don't want alt recipes and agendas to pave the way for their future. They don't want political rhetoric, but effective political and economic performance. But transforming these aspirations into political reality is easier said than done. Changes will certainly not come overnight. And ultimately, the people in the Middle East and North Africa will decide their own futures. It is not for NATO or any other international organization to interfere. But we can provide assistance if wanted. We, NATO, have a lot of experience in introducing and sustaining reform, primarily in the domain of military, defense and security sector reform. We also highly value the effective political consultations and practical cooperation we have developed with 11 countries of North Africa and the Middle East through NATO's Mediterranean Dialogue and Istanbul Cooperative Initiative Program. This has created better mutual understanding and trust. This has also been instrumental in obtaining the political and operational support NATO received from several Arab states, notably Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan and Morocco, for Operation Unified Protector in Libya. If there was a desire for further assistance from the countries concerned, we would certainly do more and assist countries like Egypt or Tunisia in their military and security reform. The Mediterranean Dialogue Program is very well structured to support the transition processes underway in many other Arab countries, and possibly in Libya as well. And we would certainly welcome Libya membership in the Mediterranean Dialogue. Ultimately, however, the countries concerned must want this too. As the expression goes, it always takes two to tango. I am confident, however, that the Allies' meetings with some of the partners from the Arab and Middle East region today in Chicago will pave way for designing more concrete forms of assistance and defense collaboration. All is to say is yes, many of your proposals coincide with our policy towards the Arab world, and I think that's very good. Finally, I'd like to briefly address the memo that focused primarily on smart defense. Much has been said about the concept of smart defense and capabilities more broadly. That is another of the three main themes discussed at today's summit. There is hardly anyone who argues against smart defense because it makes a lot of sense, in particular at a time when defense budgets are under pressure. And this is the case for all of the 28 member countries. The alliance is already fully behind this approach. NATO defense ministers have already accepted to cooperate more on multinational initiatives, and more concretely, they have agreed to launch some 25 plus multinational projects, including for better protection, better surveillance, and better maintenance and training. But your recommendations focus more on the procedural and coordination aspects of smart defense. And I agree that it is very important to have the right defense planning system in place, as well as the right structures to work with partner nations and other institutions on defense capabilities. In fact, many of these institutional partnerships already exist. For example, NATO has been working with the European Union, and in particular the EDA, on smart defense, and we will continue to do so as we move the concept forward. We will also continue to involve partner countries wherever it makes sense and is politically wanted. Your proposal to create NATO pioneer groups is very much in line with NATO's concept of building smart defense project groups run by a specific lead nation. Allied Command Transformation, ACT, has compiled a list of such capability projects, of which each one is run by one lead nation. Overall, I'm not so worried about the working structures and procedures. I think we have them basically right on target. I'm more worried about maintaining the necessary political support in capitals after the Chicago summit. Smart defense is not just a one-time effort or a list of low-hanging projects tied to the Chicago summit. Ideally, it's a multi-year, open-ended process that will transform NATO's mindset in handling capability development and procurement and achieve a clear sense of the balance between prioritization, specialization, and collaboration. Changing the working culture in Brussels and allied capitals will take more time and hard work, but agreeing on the flagship projects, which are missile defense, air-to-ground surveillance, and Baltic air policing, an initial package of 25 plus new multinational programs to launch smart defense in Chicago is a very good start, provided that it will be followed by a sustained commitment from the Allies for many years to come. Honestly, I could talk for much longer. I found a number of your points, your very insight points, very useful in the papers and in the other papers that I've read. And again, I would like to salute all of you for participating in this important project, and in fact, very revolutionary project. This is precisely the kind of discussion and debate that contribute to a stronger alliance. And on behalf of NATO, I extend my utmost thanks one more time to the Atlantic Initiative for their continued support. I look forward to working with all of you on many other initiatives. And in closing, I would like to encourage all of you to keep the discussion going. In fact, I urge you to share your perspectives and your ideas on our We NATO platform. So thank you one more time, and have a very good and successful debate during your next 2 hours. Bye.